Welcome, everybody. This is Fascinating Folks. The Fascinating Folks Educators Engaging Edupreneurs effort is one designed to foster creative and productive conversations between educators and entrepreneurs in the learning sector. And we welcome your feedback on how to make these programs as intriguing as possible. The program is run by nextvista.org, which provides a free video library of creative takes on educational topics, stories of communities and service to others, help for those learning English, interviews about careers, and loads of recordings with advice for teachers. Our mission is to highlight creative approaches to teaching and learning through our projects and contests, and we hope you'll take an interest. Nextvista.org. Ding. All right, tonight our program is with Jeremy Wolf of MindReady, which provides structured mental skills coaching for athletes of all sports and ages. For the longer story, I will hand it over to you, Jeremy. Welcome.
It's nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me. This is a joy for me. I love when we have these, Rushton, and I'm just very grateful to be an alumni of Trinity University, as are you. And so I spoke with Dr. Martinez today, and I keep my connections very close to Trinity. So it's $140,000 of student loans, well worth it. So thank you.
Go Tigers! Thank you.
Go Tigers! No, I started MindReady the idea came to me about 2 years ago. I run a nonprofit called More Than Baseball, and at More Than Baseball, we help minor league baseball players get access to affordable housing and food, equipment, career services, financial guidance, mental health coaching. When we were running our mental health program, we raised about $10,000. We raised exactly $10,000 from RBC, Royal Bank of Canada. And they said, do what you want with it, but make sure it goes towards mental health. And we thought, okay, what's the easiest thing to do? It's to provide sessions for athletes that are going to need it. So we opened it up to all of our athletes. At the time, we had about 2,800. Now we have about 3,500 minor league baseball players in our organization. And we brought in 15 athletes, and we provided 5 sessions each. $10,000 got us 15 athletes for 5 sessions each. And when I look back at that, I think that is awful that we spent $10,000 for 15 athletes to get 5 sessions. And I was really, when I think back at that, I'm really disappointed by that was the market at the time. When we wanted mental skills coaching, mental health coaching for our athletes, independent of Major League Baseball. The best rate we can find was $120 per hour for a mental health coach to work with our athletes. And when we opened it up, about 50% of our athletes are Latin, and about 75% of the players that participated were from Venezuela and the Dominican Republic. So we had a really interesting user base. We had to find people who spoke Spanish, who were bilingual. We had to find people who had a background in baseball, who understood what these athletes were going through. And so More Than Baseball raised $10,000, and we provided 5 sessions to 15 athletes, and that just wasn't good enough. It just never sat well with me. And I figured, like, that's a problem, right? Sports psychology is a growing field. Mental skills coaching and athletes is a growing field. And we can talk about how people speak publicly about it, how it's turned into this foo-foo motivational rather than actual structured practice and actual structured things that are going to help athletes on a day-to-day basis. And what MindReady is the response to that. More Than Baseball is the response of poor pay for minor leaguers. I played 2 years of minor league baseball, and I couldn't afford my own housing or food or equipment. I didn't have access to mental health coaching. MindReady is affordable mental skills coaching for athletes of all ages, of all sports, of all socioeconomic backgrounds, to be able to provide this as a resource to them. And we'll talk about pricing in a minute, and why it's important how we price it like this. And so it's important for me just to get off the bat, like this having conversations really early on in our business is for me to really think about what sorts of educational components can we bring into MindReady. Yes, we're providing telehealth sessions, but we also want to provide meditations and courses and certifications and resources. And I don't have a background in any of that. I played baseball and struck out a ton. And so my background is figuring out how I can make an athlete not throw his helmet and get angry after he fails. So I need to bring people on board, or people around, or answer questions from people who really understand how we can kind of build this educational component that's not filled with motivational BS. And MindReady is a response to that. And so problem is the stigmatization and denial of athletes' mental health is a very systematic issue on a worldwide scale. most specifically, like in baseball, we do all sports here, and we're going to do all genders and all backgrounds and all ages. But in baseball, you suck it up and you move forward, and it's failure and it's part of the game, and there's no really remedy to that. But there are more specific issues that athletes are dealing with that we can tackle when we talk about preparation and performance and steps to take to ensure that they have lasting success on and off the field. And to preface too, like MindReady is not mental health. MindReady is mental skills focused on performance. Mental health, I think, if we were to focus on what we do on mental health, we can talk about this certainly. But if we focus on mental health, I think we're going to talk, we would gear towards the detriments of what sports can bring. And if we gear what we do towards mental skills and performance based on our mental attributes, we can talk more about positive outcomes and talk about our preparation and what that'll do to decrease anxiety, sure, but not talk about anxiety first and foremost, because I just didn't want to gear our marketing or what we are as a business on the ailments. I wanted to focus on this as performance, a tool for performance, a tool for athletic development. Our research shows that 1 in 4 students have reported clinically significant levels of depressive symptoms, and 1 in 10 have the ability to seek help. That's 10%. 10% of athletes seek help. If it was available to 100% of athletes, what would that number be? And so we want to just be able to provide access to affordable mental skills coaching for athletes ages. Yes, we'll do little league and younger kids to a certain extent, but to focus on 14 to 18-year-olds and then into college and the 1% that get to professional sports. And like I mentioned before, like I always said, like I was tired of hearing people say, I hope they get the help they need. MindReady is that help. MindReady is the place that athletes can go to get that specific help that they're looking for. And we provide coaching and resources to athletes at all of these levels. And we're just starting. I have 5 athletes on board. I have 5 coaches. We're waiting on insurance to cover the business. We're looking at doing events. We're looking at creating content and things. I can start a podcast. Everybody can have a podcast, sure. But I need to make sure I have the right guests. I need to make sure that I'm good enough at producing quality content. People will follow along. People will participate if the quality is good. And we have to make sure that we have the right people on board for that. We have 4 steps to this. Telehealth. Can we connect coaches with athletes as easy as possible? We have a 3-step process for that. Then events. I need to change those numbers around. Then courses and certifications to be able to provide education directly to parents, coaches, athletes, athletics directors, anybody interested in the mental skills of athletes, and then put everything together in one place in an app, because everybody has an app. But the point of that is to ensure that we have one place to host all of our content where people can access it at any time of day. 8 million high school athletes, 450,000 college athletes, 1,000 college athletic programs. That's our market on a daily basis. When they graduate, there's another batch of athletes coming in. And so we're really lucky to be working in a situation quite like this, where there are so many athletes that are going to need this as they move forward. This is our pitch deck that I've been passing around to friends and family and everybody, but it's important to note, like, just kind of where we are in the process. People will jump on board. They'll go to our website, they'll click get started. They'll have a session with me. I'll place them with the coach. They work with the coach directly. That's it. It's a 1-2 step process. So I make sure that I can talk to the parent, that I have a connection with the parent, and so that our coaches understand where they're coming from and understand who these athletes are, and that everybody is on the same page. It took me about a year to figure out what platforms we were going to use, how we were going to figure that out, and I really wanted to be methodical in the connection between our coaches and our athletes. And so I make sure that everything is standard and curated, and also in protecting the athlete too, and making sure that he can ask the questions and get it to the appropriate people at appropriate times. We do price them very low. We have professional athlete on one level, professional athlete mentors for 4 sessions per month. It's $40 per session, $160 a month, monthly recurring. And we make sure that people can get the access they need as affordably as possible. We pay our professional athlete mentors, about $20 per session to do this. Everybody's going to have coverage insurance, and so we can make sure that they can cover that as well. Second, master's and certified LCSW, so a higher level of education on the back end, but also a more specific and focused type of coaching coming from that. That's $240 per month for 4 sessions per month, which we want people to do once a week. And we don't think that people are going to do it for a 12-month period. We actually think people are going to do it for 3 to 6 to 8 month spurts or just during the season. So we allow people to jump in for a month. There's no cancellation fee. It's just renewing every month. When they want to cancel, they'll have the remaining sessions for that month. It's super easy to jump in and out. Gold, we think less people are going to participate in this, but we want to have the access to bring in PhDs and industry experts. So we're about to get the head mental skills coach at the Florida Marlins, who was my mental skills coach with the New York Mets, to jump on board. And he's bilingual, and that's very helpful because we are trying to reach a broader market. I'm in Tucson, Arizona. I want to guess that half of the communities out here speak Spanish. And I want to ensure that we can provide this to athletes that are going to need the support. And research shows that they are going to need the support, or at least 10% of that entire team is going to need the support. What makes us important? And Russian, I know you said 8 to 10 minutes. I know that's never possible with me, but I want to make sure that there is a precedent for this. BetterHelp and Talkspace and NoCD and 98.6. It's a precedence for telehealth, and we want to gear it specifically for athletes. The revenue models are really simple for us. 1/2 of 1% of athletes in this country is 40,000. That's probably way more than we can even service. And so when we think about that at scale, we're comfortable at 2,000. And that's the amount of athletes, I think, in the school district. And so we're looking at this at scale thinking, how many coaches am I going to need for 40,000 athletes? That's an incredible amount of athletes to service on a yearly basis, on a monthly basis. But that's 1/2 of 1% of the total amount of athletes. And so when we think of 10% of the total amount of athletes, that's an enormous amount that we're doing our best to ensure that we can create quality at every level. Moving forward, though, we want to make sure that we have universities on board too. And so, number one, to ensure that we have the opportunity to work with individuals or athletic departments in high schools, but also a focus of ours should be universities. Mine and Russian's university, Trinity University, has 0 mental skills coaches on staff for 700 athletes. In the preeminent Division III school in the country, or one of the top 10 athletic Division III schools, they have nobody on staff for the mental well-being of athletes. Okay, so what if we think for a second, how much does that cost? $60,000 for an average mental skills coach of an average background. We can provide 700 sessions for that. Of the 700 athletes, 10% are going to use that. Can we get through 700 sessions in a year or 8 months to a year? Maybe, and we'll just renew from there. So I think the total amount of schools, 1,000, and the amount of athletes at each school totaling to 450,000, I'm sure we can get to a place where we're getting 50 universities, 25 universities. That's more than enough for me. But 200 universities of 1,000, is that something that's possible for us? Sure, it just comes with like the quality of coaches that we bring in. So we're the Airbnb of mental skills coaching. Events, super important for us to get people all in one place. Just to have the ability to educate people en masse and build a community together around the mental skills and mental performance of athletes. Courses and certifications, I think that's where Rushton, our relationship is going to gear towards. And I think where we are as in this conversation and maybe offline too, and how can we build the correct type of courses and certification that are easy to understand and easy to educate people based on existing research, based on things that we can just piece together and tell stories and create content based on that, rather than recreating the wheel, which we don't have to. This research is out there. We just want to bring on educators and teachers who want to participate in that. Again, it's simple, easy for us. The amount of 1/2 of 1% of the total amount of coaches in this country at the youth level is 32,000 coaches. That's 1/2 of 1%. That's a fraction of the amount of the total addressable market that we're looking at. And that is more than enough in revenue and all this analytics and numbers that we could possibly look at, but I want to make sure that we create quality content so that people understand that this is a resource they can use to educate themselves and their athletes. And lastly, an app. If anybody knows anybody who can build an app, let me know. But there is precedent to that, because Headspace and Calm and Insight Timer all have tens of millions of users. And with the amount of athletes that we're looking at bringing on board, can we just create quality audio and visual content that we can place on there? And I think it's important for us to kind of put everything in one place once we have figured out kind of our voice. And so I already started designing it, as you can see. I haven't finished it, but I think we have the pieces to be able to create something really wonderful and special here. And I think for us, it's having these conversations that's important for me to really conceptualize this. This is the first time I've gone through this deck publicly. So like with More Than Baseball, it's super easy, right? I knew from the, I could do it blindfolded. Something like this, it's like, okay, what is the value of MindReady? What am I trying to provide? I'm trying to provide mental skills coaching. And not even that, I'm trying to provide a resource for athletes to use that I didn't have. This is Markelle Fultz. He was the #1 overall pick for the Philadelphia 76ers. And I don't think he even played his rookie season because he had the yips. He had a mental block in his shooting. And the Philadelphia 76ers might have got him a sports psychologist, sure. But everyone said, I hope he gets the help he needs. And I want people to think he should go to MindReady. And that's what I'm trying to do. That's where we are. And so I really welcome the time, and I really welcome the questions, and I really want to know from y'all's perspective, like, what are some things that we can do from that educational standpoint on being able to really bring this to a larger and wider audience. And I think that's my last slide.
Fantastic, Jeremy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, no, and also quite cool to see the pitch deck, honestly, to kind of have that structure for it as we go through. What I'll do is I'll open up to questions. We're going to start with Jesse. Jesse, take a moment just to introduce yourself as well, and then launch in.
Sure. My name is Jesse Lubinsky. I am the Chief Learning Officer for Ready Learner One. We're an ed tech startup in the learning space. Interestingly enough, I've actually been doing work with a company another ed tech startup that is doing work in the mindfulness space, but in EDU, which we could talk about in a couple of minutes. My first question, and most importantly, it's safe to assume Paul O'Neill is not one of these experts who's going to keep me calm after I strike out a bat or something like that, right? I feel like that would.
No,
okay,
he's going to throw everything at you.
That's what I'm about to say. Okay, so that's good. Such a minor note, but I just can't help it because the keynoter in me has to say, you said it so quickly, but I feel like it was such an important point to hammer home that baseball is a game of failure, right? Even Hall of Fame players fail 7 out of every 10 times. So baseball players are constantly faced with failure. It's like it literally is the game itself, right? There's failure more than not. Quick question about I don't know if it's marketing strategy, but you started to kind of answer the question a little bit down the road, but I just want to make sure I'm clear. So are you planning to market directly to players, or is your thinking to align with teams and organizations, almost like the way an employee assistance program would work, to say, hey, we have this in place, and if you see almost like a Markelle Fultz type situation, we have that here? Or are you planning on attacking from both directions?
That's a good question. At first, from the grassroots level, like what high school teams can we connect with? Like what individuals can we get to? Can we exhaust the amount of individuals we can get to? Prove the model works with the amount of athletes that we have on board, and then ensure that we can get to college programs and university athletic departments from
So where I think you have a perceived edge over companies that are trying to do mindfulness stuff in the EDU space is most of the work that's being done in that space right now, and like even the company I'm working with, they're focusing on educator-based solutions. And the problem is any solution you're putting forward to an educator right now is viewed as another thing on top of what they're already doing, which means it's out before it even, like you can't do anything in that sense. But you're positioning yourself more toward players, which you're never going to find something that isn't compelling if it's to improve student, students' lives, students'
quality of
experiences,
life.
stuff like Yeah,
It's a quality of life
perfect.
thing. I spoke to a class
100%.
today. And he's like, Jeremy, are there any resources for mental health? It was at my university. Are there any resources that you used for your mental health when you were at Trinity? And I said, no. Or is there a mental skills coach in the athletic department? And they said, no. And I'm like, for the amount of wasteful spending that Trinity has, you'd think they'd be willing to bring something on board that enriches the quality of life of their athletes. And it's a super simple thing for me to ask. Do you want one coach for 700 athletes, or do you want an entire team of coaches for your 700 athletes?
The other thing is, you mentioned, speaking of the 700 hours juxtaposed with the 60. Again, I feel like this is pitch deck advice, not really questions at this point. But I'm looking at the 60K and I'm like, okay, that's 60K before we even start talking about benefits, plus the overhead from the university to have to support ensuring that it's of high quality. They've completely offloaded that process to you. So now you're ensuring high quality at lower cost without having to deal with the benefits piece, which can add up to like 30% on top of salary. So you're not even looking at 60, you're looking at more like 85, 90.
Correct.
So yeah, my question was strategically how you're approaching it. The reason why is if you needed incentives, you have the course. I find the course and certification piece particularly compelling because I work in that. Our platform is based around that space. So we have been really leaning heavy into micro credentialing as both an accountability piece, but also a strategy for increasing engagement. So I don't know if that's something that's even on your radar, but I think that's it's actually the focus of my doctoral work. So I think that's another reason why it's in my head. But yeah, so I think you've identified a need that is currently not being filled, and that's always, they say, right, the first to market, right, first to be in a space where no one's there. I think your Airbnb analogy was great. So I'll pass it over to Jarrell. I know he had a bunch of questions.
And Jarrell, introduce yourself as you come in.
Thank you so much. My name is Jarrell Maneja. I am the activities director at Milpitas High School. I'm also a varsity badminton coach. I just want to thank Jeremy for providing the service. I think it's so important, especially with everything that's happening in professional sports related to mental health. You have the Ben Simmons situation happening right now. You have Simone Biles and the withdrawal from Tokyo. And it's so interesting to see how the public views these superstar athletes and how open they're being right now in regards to mental health, because there is that stigma, and all it takes is one quick trip to social media to see both sides of the argument and both perspectives. So my first question is, what are the strategies that you utilize or that your coaches utilize to ensure they understand that this is okay, that it's okay that they're experiencing these, and to learn how to address it in their sport, especially when you're talking about a whole bunch of different sports. My assumption is that we're extending beyond baseball. So if I have a badminton player or a swimmer, professional diver, how do you control that tone about mental health as something okay to experience?
I'm gonna share my screen one more time because, and I hope I did. Did I do that, Rushton? Okay, perfect. Your question is very interesting because, like, how can we assure, like, number one, the quality of coaching is consistent? That's on us to bring in the right type of coaches who understand what we're trying to do. We're trying to create on our end sort of standards and guidelines that we want coaches to follow, but ultimately at the end of the day, they're going to be the ones to have those relationships. I can control that at 50 athletes, but if we hit our 0.5% at 40,000 athletes, I can't control that on a daily basis. And so we can have standards and guidelines that our coaches can follow, but ultimately that communication and that development is up to them. Right now on our website, we have me, Pepe, Max, Mario, Zach, Adriana, Quinn, and Aaron. Quinn's a current professional baseball player, so he's going to focus on baseball baseball centric, but he also played football and basketball in high school. Aaron played, and I have these at all pretty much the same sport right now. But Zach is a 10-year professional baseball player and was on the Israeli Olympic team with me. And so Zach, baseball, football, his daughter plays volleyball, he plays golf. He understands these sports. So if we had a badminton player, we would ensure that we paired them with a coach that had a background in badminton or had a background in tennis or could relate in that specific way towards that specific scenario. And then from there, that communication is up to them. And so, and that development is up to them. So the coach will know, okay, I got this kid for 2 times a week, and I need to make sure that I cover this in session 1 and this in session 2. I'm no educator in mental health. I don't have a background in teaching mental health. But I know that the coaches we bring in will and do. And if they don't, they won't be on the platform. Or if we really like them and they really want to participate, we're going to make sure that we educate them in a way where they can understand, work with athletes on their level. So to try to meet the athletes where they're at and basically try to curate that relationship as much as possible. But ultimately, that outcome is out to them. And there might not even be an outcome. It might just be, I really want to work with this coach because he's someone there I can talk to once a week for an hour. And that's something that I need as an athlete in season. And maybe in the off season, I switch that over to 2 times a week or 2 times a month. Maybe I switch that over to once a month. So yeah, I think that's a really good way to look at it, is like, how can we curate a specific relationship? We can just ensure that we bring in coaches who understand every aspect of what these athletes are going through. And it's pretty much, that's going to be standard across the board. Baseball players are pretty much going to have the same sort of thing. There might be outliers, but basketball is pretty much going to have the same sort of mindset. Football is going to have the same sort of mindset. What'll be different is the backgrounds, and what'll be different is how these athletes react to it. But the true outcomes that come from that will be to be able to focus on those very key aspects of performance, and that's preparation, and that's recovery. And these kids are going to have to think about, okay, in game, I can't focus when I'm hitting. How can I change that? Well, it starts with your preparation. We could talk about before the at-bat, but your preparation starts that morning. And it's preparing yourself and your mind and your body to be in those moments. And so our coaches are all experts in that and have the background in that, and we'll be able to answer those specific questions.
Great, thank you. And I really appreciate your response, because it is a great lead into my follow-up question, because you mentioned, I think, 2 of the big pieces when I think of team sports and my experience as a coach. It's the idea of what is the role of the coach, especially when we're talking about youth sports, and the building of relationships. And I think it may be a misconception. I feel the addressing mental health for a college athlete possibly preparing to compete on a professional level can be quite different than a high school athlete just trying to find their way. Maybe they're there because their parents putting pressure on them to try to make it to a D1 school, get your scholarship. Or in my case, I have a junior Olympic badminton player, but has one opponent in her league she cannot beat and will immediately shut down. And I as a coach, it is so important for me to see that. And the only reason why I recognize, because I go through a lot of this professional development on my own. As a high school badminton coach, I am required to take a variety of classes. And there's a very small, 2-minute section about how to communicate with your athlete, about mental health. And so clearly it's not a big priority. It's clear that it's on the radar of this platform that delivers these lessons, but not enough to deliver the messaging. And what we find in youth sports is that the mental health of the athlete is very dependent on the parent and the coach, which is why your segment about courses and certification was absolutely intriguing to me. What are the strategies that you utilize to communicate to parents or to coaches to signify mental health and the mental game is equally as important as the physical game in their respective sport?
I've had these conversations with a few parents that I've known for a really long time. And that's pretty much, where we're at, is bringing it to people who are interested in things that I'm doing. And those have been nice because I know them from on a deeper level, but when they ask me like, okay, where does it start, or where does it even end? I'll talk about my experience where like I had a good, my mother was very protective of me, would be like, oh, Jeremy, like, let's go get ice cream. You struck out 4 times today. And my dad would be like, you threw your helmet. I'm not going to talk to you for the next 4 days. And so living in that environment made me scared of striking out. And I don't have a really good answer for your question because yes, like the mental health of the athlete starts at home and it will be perpetuated by the coach if the coach is the same sort of way, right? But it won't be, we need to ensure that, and I want it to be my job and I want it to be our job to ensure that athletes can bring this to parents and coaches and say, hey, I think this is something that you can value, or we can bring it to parents and coaches and say, hey, this is something that can bring you value because this is something that will help me. Your treatment of me, and I could never tell my dad that, so I don't know what a 14-year-old baseball player nowadays can tell their dad, right? Because my dad gets so angry at me when I got angry, and that only made me more angry, so that I got more angry when he got angry. It just was a vicious cycle. And so we want to ensure that there is, can I ensure that the home life of every athlete is taken care of? No. Can I ensure that every coach knows that everything that he's doing and won't mess up the future of an athlete by making him hate baseball? I'm very lucky I had a good team around me because I hated my coach my senior year and absolutely like hated being at practice. And I was lucky that I loved being around my teammates because I would have quit if I didn't have them. And so if we were lucky enough to work with an athlete that had issues at home, how can we turn those negative attributes of his livelihood into positive aspects of where he can take, how can we turn that into a positive? I don't know a better way to answer that, but I do know that if we provide resources to parents that can educate them on the better treatment of their kid, or a coach on the better treatment of his athlete, we're better off there than we are right now.
All right. So as I look at many of the things you're talking about and think about the work I do, my work is very much around the stories, right? What are the stories of your school? What are the stories of your classes? What is it that tells these stories so that people understand that your school is distinctive? And I think about you approaching schools, and whether that's secondary schools, colleges, universities, you're going to run into some that are doing some things well. Clearly, a lot of them won't be because there isn't an established culture of having these kinds of resources available to athletes. And that represents your market. But are there things that you have seen in some schools, high schools, colleges, whatever it may be, where you thought, as you encounter these things, you're going to be doing a certain amount of advice for the schools in terms of how to make it possible for their athletes to be in a good position? Have you already begun to amass those stories?
Yes, but I don't think we're in the business of correcting issues.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say we're in the business of ensuring that we can provide information and resources in a way that makes sense. So are there schools out there that do a good job in protecting their athletes? Yeah, I think sure. I think there would have to be. It would be naive of me to think that there wasn't. But there's always ways that we can take that and curate something specifically for them that can help benefit them. Where they have 3 mental skills coaches and another school might have 0. They might have the interest in bringing in more. Mm-hmm. They might have the interest in a course for their coaches. They might have the interest in a seminar or an event for their kids. They might have the interest in something that we can provide that they fall short of. I'm gonna guess though that if the preeminent Division III university in the country doesn't have a mental health practitioner on staff for their athletes, that there are other universities and programs that don't even think about those resources, because who are they to put those resources in place? Like, what knowledge do they have? And I think bringing in an entity that is designed specifically for that can make their life so much easier. And that's where my background is. Like I touched on More Than Baseball earlier. More Than Baseball provides resources not only to players that they don't currently have, but we work with Major League Baseball teams to provide resources that they don't currently facilitate. And so I make it easier to work for a team because they use my resources that I've put in place for free of cost, by the way. So if the Atlanta Braves actually want to do something about it, they can call me. MindReady is that same idea, right? Trinity University doesn't have a mental health practitioner at their university. Why? Okay, what money do they have in place to do that? Are they willing to open up a position for that we can take care of? Okay, if they do have a mental skills coach, and that mental skills coach sees one of those resources that we use, they want to bring it in for their athletes that can make his job easier. That's something that we would certainly be interested in, because there is always going to be pitfalls. And we want to make sure that we can just make sure that we tighten that up as much as possible. Make sure nobody falls through the cracks. Like I've had success with More Than Baseball because if any minor league baseball player needs anything, he can come to me, he can come to us. And they know that. They know that from the team, and they've been told that from us. They've been told that from today pregame show of the World Series. They knew that. So MindReady is the same way. If you're an athlete, an individual where a program won't pay for it or won't cover it, you can use us as an individual. But also, if there are 50 kids that we're working with at Trinity University, I think Trinity would be interested in bringing this resource in for their athletes. So,
all right. We'll finish with one more question from Jesse. Jesse, go ahead.
My question was on scalability. You know, obviously you had a very clear sense of how you were going to scale numbers wise as far as acquiring customers. I guess my question was about do you have a solid plan for acquisition of coaches and qualified coaches? Because at a certain point, I would imagine that's going to be the bottleneck, right? I can get people, but it's not passive, right? It's active time. What you're selling are active components of time where you need trained people to be able to do this.
Yeah, we're pretty much averaging. What we want to have is one coach per 5 athletes. Okay. We might have to extend that to one coach per 8 athletes. Based on the coaches we bring in, we say like you can have 1 athlete if you want, and you can have 50 athletes if you want. But it's on you to schedule that with the athlete on your availability, on their availability. But the scalability comes from, okay, yes, I can bring this in front of 1 million people. And then if 10% of those 1 million people, want to work with our coaches, do I have enough coaches to service that? Where we are going to get our coaches is from master's programs and PhD programs, sports psychology programs, and working alongside those programs and athletic departments to be able to ensure that we can get more coaches coming in every year. The purpose of MindReady is, yes, to service athletes, but also mental skills coaches. I think the certification is the Associate of Athletic Mental Performance Coaching or whatever. It's just accreditation. But those are professionals who are passionate about working with athletes in this space. And for the most part, they don't have opportunity. So if we create enough opportunity for them, they're going to be willing to work with us. And because we are going to pay them very well for their time, I think it's worthwhile that they come participate with us. And so where we have 40,000 athletes, hopefully, I want to make sure that we have 10,000 coaches or whatever, 5,000 coaches working with us, but they'll all have a background in either being a professional athlete, and we'll need to educate them on those components there, but also with a master's degree or with a certified LCSW or with a PhD or actively with a team, which what are they going to do in the off season? They're not really doing anything with that team in the off season. So they have 5 months to come work with us. And so if we create opportunity, more coaches and more people are going to see that this is something that they can do as a profession. And with more teachers coming onto the platform, there'll be more teachers in this space. And ultimately, the long term of the mental health of athletes will be protected because we are providing that. And we are creating a market for more participation on both ends.
Great stuff. We'll wind things down for the recording, but But one of the things, Jeremy, I'd like you to be able to pass along before we do is, if anyone watching this recording is curious to learn more, where is the best place for them to go?
You can go to mindready.co, mindready.co, and you can email me at jeremy@mindready.co.
Wonderful. Everybody who's taken this in as a recording, we thank you very much for taking an interest in our Fascinating Folks program and the other offerings of nextvista.org. And if you have any questions at all, use the contact us at the upper right part of the webpage, and we would be happy to hear what you have to say and any suggestions you might have about how to establish this further. I want to thank our team that is here today, Jesse and Jarrell and Valerie. And Jeremy, thanks so much for taking the time to tell us about your program.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate the time.
Everybody, please take care and please stay safe.